Joining us to talk football, that is the round ball code, is Athos Sirianos, the man from FNR, Football Nation Radio. He's a little bit further away than Docklands these days. He's in a place called Ararat, but compliments of Zoom, we've got him. Athos, welcome, mate.
Hello, George. Great to be here.
Great to see you. We missed you last week, and there's so much been going on. The A-League has absolutely burst onto the scene. It's taken a little while. The football's been great, but the crowds have had reasons, of course, for any number of things, namely COVID, to stay away or to keep their distance. But I noticed that the Wanderers-Sydney game, the so-called Sydney Derby, it was back to that familiar cauldron, and Bank West looked fantastic.
Well, you're right, George. As good as the on-field has been, it hasn't quite translated off the field to the passion and the colour that we've become used to seeing at the A-League. But how good was that Sydney Derby? It was electric at the brand new Parramatta Stadium that they filled it as much as they could. You had both sets of active fans cheering and chanting all night long, and it was the Red of Western Sydney who got the job done. Sydney FC would be quite disappointed given they missed the penalty and the game was decided by that one goal, but a great advertisement for the league as a whole with great football and a great atmosphere.
And Athos, what made it even more galling for Sydney, it was probably the most prolific scorer they've ever had, Bobo, missing the penalty.
Just goes to show you anyone can miss. He was quite similar to Roberto Baggio's miss in the World Cup final. It just sailed over the crossbar and did not look like landing at all.
No. Well said. Look, there have been a spate of games since you and I last spoke. Let's touch on some of them because they've been really interesting. Victory has sort of been buoyed, it seems to me, by the news that Popovic and co, we're not sure if it's Popovic and Sons yet, but come July, there is going to be a new direction for the Melbourne Victory.
Certainly, Steve Keane, the ex-Blackburn coach, has the job in the interim, and he's made it clear that he will not be there next season. So I guess he's auditioning like the players are for future roles. There has been a bit of discontent. Steve Keane was quite public in saying that he was disappointed that Popovic had almost been addressing the players behind his back and telling them allegedly who was staying and who was going next season. We're not sure how many players he told or whether he told any that they're not going to be there next season. So Steve Keane was quite frustrated that Popovic did not talk to him first. So there is that sort of simmering ahead of Popovic's appointment for next season. And it is interesting that if this is the case, whether it does disrupt the dressing room before he even gets there.
Look, there are some interesting things going on, as you touched on, behind the scenes and also on the pitch. I think the performances of late, over the last couple of weeks, have been much better. You've seen some youngsters being given a chance to show their wares. And just as the youngsters have proved throughout the season, they're bringing some real energy and some exhilarating football, and none more so than the couple of young boys that Melbourne City have, Marco Tilio and Stefan Kolikovski. Every time they step onto the ground, the tempo and the pulse rises quite a few notches. And again, young Marco Tilio was dynamic last night, helping City to a 3-1 win away at a place that they normally have found has become a stumbling block, and I'm talking about Perth. They took on the Glory, they went one down, which is not good news for anybody, but they ended up running away with the game.
It's an interesting role that a lot of those boys play, that super sub, to inject a bit of pace. As someone who was, I think, fulfilling that role quite well at the beginning of the season was Dylan Pirius for Western United, but it's come to a stage where he's evolved and he's gone from that super sub to a genuine starter, and he's making such an impact. Him and Lockie Wales, I think, over the last month or so have been very good for Western United, which is quite a difficult squad to break into, given they've got so many experienced players who have done it so many times here in the A-League. So kudos to those two boys, and I'm hoping that the City guys, Kolikovski and Tilio, can take that next step because they're both sensational players. Kolikovski very much adored in Melbourne. He grew up a Melbourne Heart fan, so that's a great story should he rise to that next level.
What did you make of Western United? You brought them in there. They have just been knocked off the perch. They were looking really good for 2 or 3 weeks, and suddenly they've run into a Brisbane side that's also mounting quite a campaign to make the finals and indeed go on with it.
Yeah, the race for the top six is really, really tight. Western do have a game in hand. They play the Wanderers this coming weekend. But yeah, it feels like with Western United, we're just constantly waiting for them to just kick on and win those 4 or 5 games in a row. It hasn't quite happened yet. We know they have the quality to do it, and I am confident they will make the finals. But they're running out of time. They're going to have to pull off a few big performances soon. I thought Ryan Scott was sensational last night. He's been a fantastic advertisement for NPL and making that jump to the A-League. All of a sudden, that gap isn't as big as we once thought it possibly may be, and he's keeping the goalkeeper of the year in 1920, Philip Curto, out of the side, which is a remarkable thing.
That's a statement and a half you just touched on. The goalkeeper of the A-League last year can't get a run on because a young man from the NPL, who of course we know from Bentley Greens, has just stepped into those custodians' gloves, and he's enjoying very much not only the opportunity to play, but we must say he's a smart young man as well. He's a sports media guy, so he's actually riding and living the dream.
He certainly is. He's been invited into the FNR broadcast suites whenever he likes to report on whatever. We had him in a few weeks ago as part of the green room, and he was sensational. So he does have that degree behind him as well. So
can I just take an opportunity and commend you and FNR with what you're doing for the green room and the A-League, giving Western United a platform to engage with their fans and for their fans to find out a whole lot more about what makes Western United so different and what makes them tick, and who are the characters. And there are some. You guys have managed to create quite some energy out of that show.
Well, there are characters anywhere, and it's about providing the platform to unearth them and let them tell their story and connect with the fans on a deeper level. One of the things that Western encouraged their players was not to wear club gear because it makes them feel more relaxed, and it helps create that colloquial atmosphere with us as the presenters and the players. So no, they've done a fantastic job, and we're hoping that they can make the finals too, and we can enjoy the journey with them.
Oh, look, that's fantastic stuff. All right, speaking of a journey, we've reached that stage in the European Championship. We're now seeing that there's a final coming up in Istanbul, and we now know who's likely to take on one another, and it's a couple of teams from the English Premier League. Go figure.
Very much so. We had Manchester City dismantling PSG, and they're now one step closer to lifting their inaugural Champions League in what will be Sergio Aguero's last season for Manchester City. So that is the fairy tale heading into this game. And they face Chelsea, who only won the Champions League less than a decade ago. They know how to do it. For them, the game's very important because they're a chance of missing the top 4 in England. So should they win the Champions League, that is their ticket to next season's competition. And unfortunately, it could mean that a West Ham or a Tottenham could miss out should they finish 4th. So there's a bit to play out there with Chelsea winning it. But at the moment, City would be the favourites. They've toppled PSG, who, again, were looking to break their Champions League duck. And they know they can beat Chelsea. They've actually got them, I think, this week in the Premier League. Whereas Real Madrid, if they had got through, they still have that aura about them that Real Madrid have, and they've won that many Champions Leagues. That, mentally it may have caused a few hurdles for City.
Just before we go and we wrap this up, I cannot finish our FNR and Informer chat without touching on the fact that there's a new coach at Roma in the Serie A. Guess who it is?
It's not Jose Mourinho, is it?
Yeah. Did you see that coming?
No, well, normally...
14 days after he walked out of Tottenham Hotspur, he's the new coach at Roma.
Well, Roma, as we know, they're a club that tend to punch above their weight, and they've done so for the last few years, but they've fallen off the pace recently. So they're looking to break into that top 6 and maybe sneak a top 4 in there too. And they believe Jose is the man, but they didn't waste any time in snapping him up, that's for sure.
Did you imagine, or do you imagine, there's another chapter in the Mourinho story, or is it over?
I think there is. I think a chapter that a lot of people want to see is him as an international manager, perhaps coaching Portugal. I think that would be a perfect send-off. But I don't think Mourinho is patient enough between international windows. I think he's someone who needs that attention each and every week. So I think that chapter is something that is in his future. But again, it remains to be seen how it all plays out.
Thank you, Athos. Athos Sirianos, the man from FNR, Football Nation Radio, who each and every week joins us to talk about the world game, soccer on FNR, and of course, The Informer. Thank you, mate.
Thanks.